Forster, in aspects of the novel, describes two fundamentally different types of characters and their characterization. Flat and round characters. A flat character does not change throughout the course of a story or play, while a round character develops and alters. Forster cites Mrs. Micawber as an example of a flat character and Becky Sharp as an example of a round one. Shakespeare's Henry IV offers a suitable contrast with the characters of Hotspur and Prince Hal. Hotspur is a flat character, whereas Prince Hal changes and develops significantly throughout the play. A round character is defined as one whose depth and complexities are evident throughout the story, reflecting the psychological intricacies that all humans share. Writing a round character is challenging because it requires the author to unravel various aspects of human psychology within that character. To portray a fictional human being with the complexity of real-world people, a round character often faces external conflict, as no one gets along with everyone. They also experience internal conflict, struggling with their own flaws, insecurities, philosophies, and problems. The story's conflict is driven by the protagonist's desires and motives, which can be physical, emotional, material, or philosophical, and are not easily attained. Truly complex characters exhibit internal contradictions, such as desiring love but pushing away potential suitors. Their speech patterns reflect their personality, background, profession, generation, quirks, and preferred vocabulary. A character's backstory is crucial to understanding their complexities, traumas, feelings, desires, and flaws, as we typically encounter them later in life. Round characters are relatable, possessing traits that connect them with readers on a personal level. They often have a fatal flaw, or hamartia, which prevents them from overcoming obstacles necessary to resolve the story's conflict. Not all characters will have every one of these components, such as a fatal flaw or internal contradictions, depending on their role in the story. In literature, round characters are generally the main characters, including the protagonist, their closest relationships, and often the antagonist. Now let's take some examples of round characters. The first one is Quentin Compson in The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner. The Sound and the Fury is a novel about the Compson family's decline in the postbellum South. It is divided into 4 sections, each focusing on a different day and a different character. Quentin, the most intelligent Compson, is a Harvard freshman who struggles with issues of justice, purity, and the meaninglessness of life. He is deeply obsessed with his sister, Caddy, whom he tries and fails to protect from harsh realities. Quentin's external conflicts are numerous and antagonistic. His father burdens him with a nihilistic worldview. His overprotectiveness of Caddy leads him to despise Dalton Ames, who may have impregnated her, and Herbert Head, her brief husband. However, these conflicts are not part of the present day in which Quentin's story is set. Quentin's internal conflict is a major aspect of his character and can be seen as his fatal flaw. Like Shakespeare's Hamlet, he overthinks to the point of madness. Quentin obsesses over justice, purity, and life's meaninglessness, constantly seeking a reason to continue living. He clings to ideals of justice and chivalry, finding hope in Caddy's purity. But Caddy's perceived impurity, due to her sexual promiscuity and status as a single mother, drives him to madness as he searches for meaning and value in a seemingly meaningless world. Quentin's desires and motives revolve around finding meaning, order, justice, and purity. He is driven by a need for reason, value, and beauty in the world. Quentin's contradictions are evident in his relationship with Caddy. Despite his ideals of justice and chivalry, he is patronizing and possessive towards her. He wants her purity for himself and even lies to his father about committing incest with her, hoping they will be banished together. Quentin believes that by taking responsibility for Caddy's sin, he can absolve her and find a purpose for his life. Quentin's backstory is marked by his family's loss of honor and prestige since the Civil War. The Comp's sons have lost much of their wealth and are ridiculed by the townspeople. Quentin mourns the South's loss in the war, and while these details may not be directly relevant to his backstory, they inform his strained family relations, his nihilistic father, his unhappy siblings, and his search for meaning in a world that seems to have abandoned him. Quentin's desire for justice is admirable. Faulkner's use of stream of consciousness provides readers with a clear window into Quentin's thoughts, feelings, and reactions. While Quentin is not particularly likable by modern standards, considering his lies about incest, obsession with Caddy's virginity, and yearning for a slave-holding South, his need for meaning in the world is relatable. Quentin's fatal flaw is his tendency to overthink. His obsessive thoughts and memories drive him to insanity. His desire for justice and purity is ironically selfish, stemming from his need for order and honor. Ultimately, his inability to find justice and meaning in the world leads him to commit suicide. Let's take another example. Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre, the protagonist of Jane Eyre, is a headstrong and resilient woman in 19th century England. The novel traces her journey from an abusive childhood to a life of her own choosing. Her independence and strong sense of justice are controversial for the culture of her time. Jane's character and life are complex, as Jane Eyre is one of the first novels to explore its protagonist's social, moral, and psychological development in great depth. Jane faces numerous external conflicts throughout her life. She grows up in an abusive family and has a headstrong nature, leading to frequent clashes with those who try to control her. Her aunt and cousins are spiteful, and her headmaster and many teachers are keen on guilt and punishment. Her employer and eventual husband, Edward Rochester, teases her and makes her jealous with other women while hiding the existence of his secret wife. Additionally, her cousin, St. John Rivers, proposes marriage out of duty rather than love. These conflicts shape Jane's character, helping her form a strong sense of self and a personal philosophy in a cold, often selfish world. Internally, Jane's traumatic childhood fuels much of her conflict. Her ambiguous relationship with her family affects her future relationships, making her torn between desiring love, intimacy, and connection, and valuing her freedom and independence. Trust, especially with men, demands more than she is sometimes willing to give. This ongoing conflict between seeking connection and prioritizing herself recurs throughout the novel, underscoring themes of feminism and sexuality. Jane's desires and motives revolve around her need for both independence and connection. These competing desires drive many of her decisions throughout the novel. Jane's contradictions make her a complex character. Her competing desires for independence and connection coexist in a woman navigating the social realities of 19th-century England. These conflicting motives may make her difficult to understand, but they also make her relatable. Jane's backstory is essential to understanding her character. In addition to her abusive family, her schooling was lonely and harsh. She and the other students were publicly shamed for minor wrongdoings and often neglected of food, medicine, and care, leading to the death of her friend Helen. In contrast to a round character, a flat character lacks the depth, complexity, and nuance typically reserved for protagonists and antagonists. This does not mean the character lacks depth entirely, but rather that their depth is not crucial to the story. Flat characters fulfill a specific role, often an archetype, to advance the plot. Flat characters are present in both literary and genre fiction, though they are often more prominent as protagonists in genre fiction. For example, Sherlock Holmes is a decisively intelligent character whose interior life and personal emotions are irrelevant to solving the story's mystery. The reader primarily sees his speech patterns, logical mind, and problem-solving prowess. Traits of flat characters include being understandable without the need for nuances, contradictions, and complexities. They are predictable, with consistent responses in any given situation. Flat characters are easy to summarize in a few adjectives or sentences. For example, Sam Spade from the Maltese Falcon can be described as wry, jaded, and driven, San Francisco's finest and grittiest private investigator. Their decisions are driven by the plot, unlike round characters whose decisions drive the plot. Flat characters are often built on tropes and archetypes, such as a dry, awkward engineer focused on work or a pretty, sociable, and elitist prom queen. Flat characters are found in both literary and genre fiction. In genre fiction, they might be the protagonist and antagonist. In literary fiction, these characters are usually secondary or tertiary but still play important roles in advancing the plot. A significant part of Jane Eyre's enduring success is Jane's likability. She is unapologetically herself in a society that tries to control women's behavior. She is earnest in both her independence and her desire for intimacy. Her adverse reactions to not receiving the care she seeks and deserves, though intense, feel familiar to readers of all backgrounds. An example of a flat character is Hercule Poirot, a recurring character in Agatha Christie's mystery novels. Poirot is Agatha Christie's most renowned protagonist. In novels like Murder on the Orient Express and the ABC Murders, Poirot's deft understanding of human psychology paves the way for his tricky, exciting detective work. His quirks of speech and distinct mustache have made him an icon in both literature and murder mystery TV. Poirot is an easy character to understand because his goal is always to dissect human behavior and solve mysterious crimes. After you've read a few of Agatha Christie's novels, you understand that Poirot is economical with information and great at setting up psychological traps. Everything Poirot does is to catch the murderer, with the pursuit of justice driving his actions and investigations. While Poirot is a distinctly original character, his intelligence, wit, psychological prowess, and quirky detective behavior are all entertaining conventions of the murder mystery genre. This makes him an archetypical flat character in mystery fiction. Another example of a flat character is Nick Bottom, in A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. Nick Bottom is a comic relief character in A Midsummer Night's Dream. A trickster fairy, Puck, accidentally turns Nick's head into a donkey's. Separately, Oberon, the jealous fairy king, casts a spell on the fairy queen Titania to make her fall in love with the first thing she sees, which happens to be the donkey-headed Bottom. Titania's romance with Bottom and his continuous bumblings and verbal errors drive much of the play's comedy. Like other comic relief characters, the audience understands that Bottom's role is to screw things up and, quite literally, make an ass of himself. Comic relief characters in Shakespeare's plays are known for their situational irony, sexual jokes, and frequent use of puns. Bottom appears with nearly every character at some point in the play. Despite this, his actions are entirely plot-driven, as he must scare away certain characters, miscommunicate with others, or act in the play within a play. Nick Bottom is a typical comic relief character in Shakespeare's works. Shakespearean plays needed to appeal to all social strata, so while his plays often involved main characters exploring deep, complex themes, comic relief characters like Bottom provided entertainment for the audience with bawdy humor.